Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. My name is Garen, and today we're going to be discussing what is wrong with our children. Nice to see you all today. Again, my name is Garen with Awaken the World, and today we're going to be discussing what is wrong with our children. And this came about from another member request. One of our members is a teacher, and she's noticed some disturbing trends in the school system, and this is not new. It's just not. So I have a few statistics here that I'd like to talk about, and we have to keep in mind that these statistics are 5 years old at this point, okay? And these seem to be the most recent ones that I could find that were verified. And from the period, basically from 2003 until 2012, there has been a 43% increase in ADHD diagnosis in children. 43%, that's almost 50% increase. That's an incredible number. Depression, there has been a 37% increase in depression diagnoses in children. And teen suicide has wrapped up over 100%. What is going on? What is going wrong with our children? And you know, this is really going to suck. But the answer is us. We're what's going wrong. The adults. It's not the kids. It's the adults. And we're going to talk about why this is going on, okay? And back in the day, we had responsibilities and we had consequences for failing to live up to those responsibilities, okay? Now, I'm not saying it was perfect. My family situation was particularly abusive, unfortunately. As a matter of fact, I remember being whipped so hard with one of those plasticky skipping ropes from back in the day when rubbery products were just first starting to come out. And do you remember those skipping ropes? They were basically made of all one piece of material, and the ends were kind of a lighter color of the rope material that was made of sort of a plastic. Well, I was whipped so bad with one of those one time that I couldn't go to swimming for 2 weeks in the school system. I had to take a note for 2 weeks because I had lash marks on my back, scars from it. Now, I'm not saying that was right, but my point is this. I had responsibilities as a child that I had to live up to, and there were consequences for not living up to them. Very real consequences. There were clearly defined limits to what I could and could not do, to what I was able to take and not take. And I came from a really broken family, so the information, I didn't receive that information from two parents working together. I received it from one parent and a lot of outside sources. Balanced nutrition and rest. We ate better. As a species, we used to eat better. We've gone insane with this fast food world. No time in our lives to prepare real food, eating boxed food. Food that comes in boxes is not food. When we go to the supermarket, there's a reason why they say stay to the outside edge of the store. Everything in the middle is pretty much garbage. It's that fresh stuff you want. It's that fresh food. We don't do that now. We have prepackaged meals and no one has the time. So children are coming home and choosing whatever they can get their hands on quickly to get onto that screen. And we're going to talk about that. Creative play. When I was young, you weren't allowed to be inside the house if the sun was shining. It was a rule. Sun is shining, even if it was raining, as long as it wasn't like pouring cats and dogs. Because, of course, no one wants to get hit with a cat or a dog. You would be outside and it wasn't a choice. The rule was, usually within half an hour or so of breakfast and breakfast dishes, get out. Be here for lunch if I didn't take a lunch with me, or let me know if you're going to be somewhere else for lunch. And that usually entailed running home or phoning from a friend's house because there were no cell phones, of course. And we spent all our time outside in nature. We played in the woods. We had grand adventures. We created. We stretched ourselves in our imagination. Our social interactions were tied up in our play, and we didn't have parents around. We didn't have cell phones to get onto to tattletale on people. You had to learn how to deal with things as an individual and as a community of children. You had to learn these interactions. You had to work them. The parents were too far away. And when it was necessary, you could always get a parent. You could always go find someone. There was always someone home on our block. Not everyone, but there was always someone home. Someone you could go talk to if you needed to. Available parents. This is a big one. Emotionally, physically, mentally, most parents are not available to their children anymore. They're out there too busy working. And when they're not working, they're stuck in their own online world. You know, here in Canada, we have the highest number of hours a day spent watching television as anywhere else on the planet. Somewhere in the range of 6 to 7 hours of screen time a day. That is insanity. Our parents could be talked to. They were around. They didn't come home and involve themselves in online games or locking themselves in a room for their own online experience, or the family mute sitting in front of a screen absorbing a movie where no one talks to each other. We didn't do those sort of things. And when we did have movies, it was rare. And we discussed it. We talked about it. It wasn't waiting to escape back to my own environment again. You know, it's a shame because even in our house here, and unfortunately, I came into Kelly's life too late to affect any real change in her children from the path that they were already on. Their egos were too entrenched. And our youngest boy, who is still in the house with us here, despite what we have tried, you know, he spends a majority of his time locked upstairs in his room. And we've limited his internet time. But of course, the rest of his family is contributing to making sure he has enough data on his phone that they've given him, which he pays $90 some odd a month for. It's insane. That he spends most of his time online. That's where his existence is. He doesn't live here. What's wrong with our children? It's us. It's the way we are choosing to live. It's the way we are choosing to design and run our societies. And it is all based on unconsciousness. It is all based in ego. Unconsciousness. Totally asleep. Populations. This is not a blame game. This is not to say that parents are not doing the best with what they can. But the question's been asked, what is wrong with our children? And the answer is nothing is wrong with the children. We are the wrong. We are that which is corrupting the future of our civilization. So this is what we have today. We have distracted parents. We have parents who are online or both are so busy working to try and make ends meet for this giant environmentally destructive and wasteful home that no one ever gets to enjoy, as everyone spends glued to their screens when they're not busy doing whatever else they're doing. They're not family, they're roommates. Parents let their kids get away with almost anything these days, and they will hand them almost anything. Why? A lot of it's guilt. Well, I'm busy working all the time, and my wife's busy working all the time. The kid wants a new motorbike, I'll buy them a new motorbike. You know, that happened in the States with the birth back in the 80s of the 600 series Honda motorcycles. Inexpensive, very powerful, very fast. The number of children who were killed on those motorcycles inside of a 2-year period was so high that in the state of California, you could not buy a bike for your 16-year-old child anymore, a motorcycle of that power. This is the way we behave. This is what we choose to do. And we ask the question, what is wrong with our children? It is not our children that are wrong. It is our whole system and way of being. And when I say wrong, of course, I'm using words. It is perfect and it is showing us the dysfunction of our living contrary to nature, contrary to a natural path. Children these days have a sense of entitlement rather than responsibility. You know, I've worked, I wanted the experience of working in an orchard, of taking an orchard from basically the winter time after the crop, in the very beginnings of early spring, all the way through until the last apples came off in October and the orchard was shut down. So I did it, and I did that while I was a little bit over 50. And I have to say, out of all the and I was in charge, so I hired everyone as well. And out of all the people I hired, the guy who worked the best was a 72-year-old East Indian. He and I worked together. The young people, the kids, most of them didn't want to work. Most of them would be out there all day and they'd want cash at the end of the day. And I would say, well, what did you do today? I gave you a list this morning. What's actually done on that list? And then the excuses come out and all the reasons why. But they still want their money. They still feel entitled. Well, I've been sitting around here all day. Hand me something. Inadequate rest, poor nutrition. You know, when I was young at night, of course, we didn't have any of these digital toys. So when you went to bed, you went to bed. You read. Or you played under the covers with your flashlight and your book, or your toys, your dinosaurs, or whatever you had, or your you know, I had G.I. Joes and a Joey doll, and you would play with your toys, and then you would fall asleep, and you would get a good night's rest. Now, long after the parents are asleep, the children are up 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on that screen, not getting adequate rest. Their body's not growing properly and healing properly because of that lack of rest. Children need at least 8 hours. 9 is preferable. I know for a fact sometimes our boy will be up at 2:30 in the morning still, chit-chatting with friends. And then struggling to get out of bed at 7 o'clock so he can be at his band class at 8. Sedentary indoor lifestyle. As I said, we used to be outside all the time. Now, kids are sitting in front of screens. And I've talked about this many times in many of my videos. Where my wife and I live, we can see we're at the very end. We're very fortunate because we have the end property and it's all surrounded in a big 10-foot cedar hedge and a nice high fence line. And then our house, of course. But we can see all the way up the 9 other yards. And we never, ever, ever see anyone outside. Ever. Not making any effort to beautify their space. Not making any effort to come out and enjoy the fresh air, listen to the birds, talk to their neighbors. Everyone is inside on their devices. And when my wife and I go for a walk, and we go for a walk twice a day, once early in the morning and once in the evening. And when we go for a walk in the evening after evening yoga session, we lament to see, rather than people being out walking, speaking with each other, enjoying, exercising themselves, house after house after house, you can see the giant screens, and they're on, and they're flashing like discos. It's almost mesmerizing, even from being outside the house as you're walking by, to look at it. It looks like they have a funky Christmas tree going nonstop. This constant bombardment that our children are feeding themselves, that there is never a moment where things just stop. It's all this high wattage information, all this stimulus. And as soon as that stimulus begins to disappear, they're lost because it's the only thing they know, and it's what their brain is craving more of now. They do not understand boredom. You know, I had a great teacher of mine, a great Lama, one day say to me that boredom belongs to the individual, that an awakened man will never feel boredom, neither will an awakened woman. And I agree. I don't get bored. But I notice our son, for example, if there's no one online, or the internet's down, God forbid, all of a sudden there's nothing to do. And he's bored of his tree and he usually just sleeps. This is what the child's brain has become. This is what a large portion of our children's brains have become. Endless stimulation, technological babysitting. Even little babies now are being sat down with screens rather than the mother interacting with the child. Put them in front of the TV. That'll look after them for at least 2 hours. Instant gratification. I want it now. And an absence of creativity. Everything's there online. You know, our children are becoming a great race of users. They know how to use the technology, but they have no idea what the technology is doing to them. We have no idea as parents. We are not paying attention. We have to wake up. This is why we as a species need to waken. You know, my wife and I were walking this morning and we were talking about, you know, a year from now our last boy will be leaving the house. He'll be done grade 12 and he's decided he wants to go experience his dad for a year living with his dad. Good luck with that one. That being said, we're wide open, and I'm trying to open Kelly to more and more possibilities. And one of the possibilities was, you know, well, we could start a really open sort of daycare. I would teach meditation, yoga, tai chi, interaction with nature, take them into the woods and the forests, teach them a love for the beauty around us. Kelly would teach through her music and her piano, and I would add to that. You know, this morning she was saying, and she's going to a kindergarten class to teach piano. She goes there once a week for an hour. And she said, well, I was going to do musical chairs. And I said, you know what I don't like about musical chairs? There's always a child who's left out. And we teach children that it's okay to fight and scrabble and push to get your spot. And there's a loser. There's a child who's left out. And I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that. If we want to change our society, if we want to stand a chance as a species to evolve, we have to start with our children. And I have spoken about this before. We have to drop our narrow-minded, old, non-evolutionary beliefs about what it means to raise children, what it means to be a society, what it means to live. This economic nightmare we have created. Do you realize we are the only species on the planet that recognizes cash? The only species. We are insane. We are off our rockers, and we're wondering why we're raising more and more insane children. Violence is at an all-time high in the school system. Teachers are being blamed by parents and society for not looking after the children. Since when is it a teacher's job to look after your child? Since when is the school system responsible to care for your child? Is that not your job as a parent? I see and hear and have teachers, not one, not two, but many, pleading with me, please talk more about this stuff. Help us. No one listens. And if you're a woman in a school system, you have it really tough. Because those young teenage boys, they're being taught by our society that there's no need to have respect for a woman, that she's weak, she's less. And I don't care what advances you hear about in the news towards pay equality. You know, we've been talking about pay equality since the 60s, for God's sakes. I remember. 50 years later, and we're still looking for it. The wool's been pulled over all your eyes, and you are pulling the wool, intentionally or unintentionally, right over top of your children's head. You are limiting your children's future. You are limiting the future of our civilization, of our societies, of our race. And it's not your fault. I'm not blaming you. I'm pointing out the reality of the truth. The obviousness of the truth. That we no longer raise children. We simply give birth to them. And then as soon as it's possible, we hand them over to a society to raise. And that society is not fit to raise children. You know, if you went to a traditional First Nations community, and they're getting harder and harder to find those who have not been totally infected by our obnoxious and noxious way of existence. You will find that when a young couple has a baby, there is an understanding in the community that young couple is still a baby. They're still babies, and babies should not raise babies. So the elders, all of the elders together, and the entire community take on the role of raising the children. They take it on consciously. They take it on with the understanding that this child represents the future of us. Our idea of our child's future is making sure that we've provided them with a good retirement before they hit 20. Or lots of money that they can go on living their egotistical, sound asleep, unconscious ways, doing further environmental damage and harm to themselves and the whole in the process. I know I sound judgmental today. I'm not. I'm being objective about this. But I am passionate about it. Make no mistake. Our future, if we have one as a species, and to be honest, I haven't quite made that decision yet. And it's okay. There's tens of thousands of other species out there in the universe that you can go and play with. Assuming that humanity is going to survive, our survival lies in what we're doing with our children. And we are not doing what we need to do with our children today. In the upcoming world of more and more automation with less and less work available, we need to revamp and reorganize our entire system on this planet, starting with dropping this, quite frankly, bullshit economy based on money. We worship that money. That money takes precedence over everything. And don't sit there and tell me that that's not true, because I know it is. Because when it comes time to pay your mortgage, you will not pray to God. You will go and you will pray to your bank to give you extra time if you need it. Or to let you have a month without paying. And when you see someone sitting there in the street and your pocket is full of cash, will you be willing to hand them some of it? Or do you need to hold on to that money? We have a healthcare system where money determines the level of treatment you get. You know, the government wait list for surgeries and other medical necessities in our country had topped roughly 3,600 people a short time ago. And the government came out and said, well, actually, that number is significantly lower. A lot of those people have passed away. And no one really got that. The news printed it, and I waited for an uproar, and nobody said anything. Sleeping populace. Almost 1,400 of those people had already died due to them not getting their surgeries, not getting their appointments. Why? Because the money wasn't there. Will we sacrifice and continue to sacrifice the well-meaning, good-hearted people who wish to serve us and wish to serve our society by taking on the awesome role of teaching our children? Will we continue to hamstring them financially? Will we continue to hamstring them when it comes with placing unfair responsibilities on them to deal with our children? When will we realize that our future, our collective future, is in their hands? We've blown it. We've blown it up until this point. And you know what? It's all okay. All comes down to choice. What are we going to choose? What are we going to do as a civilization? What are we going to do as a species? Can we rise up with one voice and say, no more will we live in a system like this. No more will we put the dollar and the self-interest of the rich and of corporations ahead of life. Our children are lost. We are responsible for their loss. There is no help for them outside of what we are willing to do. And we cannot blame them for where they find themselves today. There's going to be some feedback on this one, and I look forward to it. I really do, and we will have a second conversation about this. We're going to wrap this up for today. Much love and namaste, and I do ask patience and understanding if I can become a little too passionate about this. But I'm not going to look at what we are not doing right anymore. I want to focus going forward now on what we need to do. And I've shown you part of what we need to do. And it starts with a change inside of ourselves. It starts with an awareness. It all begins with that. Again, much love, namaste. We'll talk again soon.